And so as normally, then we set our motivation to do whatever we possibly can to attain the peerless state of enlightenment in order to be of benefit to all sentient beings. And knowing that in order to attain such a state, I must perfect all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. And to perfect those trainings, I need to be able to rely on a non-mistaken presentation, good understanding based on a non-mistaken presentation of those teachings. And so it is with this in mind that I'm here to this morning to listen to a teaching on the Graduated Path series of texts. And so, this motivation means that really, whatever situation we find ourselves in, that during this time, we should say to ourselves, my commitment is to really do whatever I possibly can to attain that state of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And that means that whatever arises for me in terms of happiness and suffering, whatever that is, I should be willing and ready, committed to being able to employ all those experiences to further that goal, that commitment, that motivation to attain that state of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so everything that we do then is kind of geared towards the attainment of liberation and the omniscient state of enlightenment. And that's what we should constantly remind ourselves, that this is what I'm committed to doing. And so it's kind of like, to really see the current situation as a primary kind of like opportunity for practice, for being able to further our objective of attaining enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so whether it's an occasion, an opportunity for developing or cultivating our renunciation, our mind of enlightenment, our loving kindness, our compassion, or whatever situation it is, we use the conditions that we have before us and make them into conducive conditions for practice. And that means even if our situation is good in terms of having good worldly conditions, that we use those conditions in order to further our mind training in these particular noble qualities. And it's kind of like a case of really seeking out the inspiration from every situation that you are in order to be able to create the causes to attain enlightenment. And therefore, no matter what the situations are, whether you see them whether they are kind of a very poor conditions, negative conditions, or very positive conditions, it becomes more and more irrelevant to you because you have engaged in that mind training to see whatever arises and use it to make your life more meaningful by furthering your mind and cultivating these qualities of enlightenment. And this kind of said there's no room really for having any kind of unhappiness or boredom in that kind of mind state. So it's kind of really important for us to be able to seek that inspiration, especially in situations like now where we are kind of restricted and so on, and to not see it as a negative thing, but really see what's positive about it and how to make it meaningful.
그래서 지난 게 내단 거래 집어네 되게 그러나 최인다 메시지 쉐가 그거 다녀온데 다 최 유래의 소수의 삼모단단 거 전에 처리 줄도 가지고 오도와
to understand as well that whatever the external conditions are, it kind of like there's a doubt over whether they are can be seen as good or bad. That it's really a matter of our mental state and the way we apply our mind as to whether they become spiritual kind of conditions or not, or conditions for our furtherment of our dharma.
어디서 다가제 내가 거기서 철로조 제도 또 거기 최최대 안에 가서 최최수 좋아 안에 최최최 무엇이마 안에 최최수 좋도와 안에 제가 랑게 내가 근데 제네 안에 저기 가서도 다가제 저기 가서도 다 최주도에 안에 천재를 배주 땅도 어떤데 좀 거수에서도 다 철로조 지고요 봐 철로조 지고요 안에 근데 철로조 제한테 다 안에 다 그저데 지금 니샤出境了 봐 배주 땅도 봐 제도 계속 뭐 배주 마당만 이나 하는 거저 철로조 저 배모도 차 배나 준준나 소한데现在 그래서 매다 내발을 팬답게 매 사단데 매 사단게 뎁로나 뎁다 배절로 되나 내발 팬도고 도왔어 내발 팬발라 내발데 매 가리나 매도 사고고 도왔어 어디 당신께는 뭐저 저기 최지다 로바당게 팬도고 말이야 다최 아니 소소게 내가 근데 제발은 최를 줄도가 제발이나 아니 최 제스가 창이요 봐. 최 제마스가 창이요.
So it be very, very clear to us that the objective of any of this sort of learning of Dharma is in order to integrate it into our lives, integrate it into all of the conditions that we encounter during our lives. And so this is what the Dharma training is about. This is what following the Dharma is about. This is the kind of always to recognize the impulse for Dharma, to put whatever conditions there are into kind of practice. So that's what studying the Dharma really is about. It's not about just knowing what's in the books, but rather it's using the information in order to integrate it into your life, into the situations of your life. And so in this year, like the 2020, kind of just look at all the conditions that are thrown up for us and to be able to see how we can transform that into a spiritual kind of time. And it's like, doctors and medicine. It's kind of like when you are, reading the medical journals isn't going to cure your illness. You need to be able to find the medicine and take that medicine in order to recover from the particular illness that you have. In the same way that we have the texts of Dharma to inform us about what we then must put into practice. And it's all about putting into practice. Studying the Dharma means that there's no gap between that studying and integrating it into your life. It has to be one and the same thing to be actually counted as Dharma practice. And so what counts as spiritual practice? An example would be, say, we meet with difficult, inconducive conditions. The first objective is to not allow the mental afflictions to take control here, but to minimize the influence of the mental afflictions more and more and more until we can eradicate them. And that is called spiritual practice. Then we change those inconducive conditions into conducive conditions for spiritual practice.
녀몽 그 깨주절 때더라 다 대자 먼저 대 카페 짜게 될래 아니 녀몽 그 조다한테 시에 개처물 와 아니 근데진의 깨도 근데진의 깨면도 아니 왔다 마게다 매바 차에 돼 먼저 라레 따고야 아니 깨다 딱그 통계 자에 아니 각자 전에 거다 매바 소답지에 왔다 되되질 아니 최냐면 제스기로 봐 최냐면 제스기로 왔다
So that it be understood at the outset that, of course, our minds are so habituated to the mental afflictions that they seem to arise so spontaneously, so automatically, so easily, that all you have to do is get a hint of a negative condition for the anger and the frustration and so on to be triggered. And so it's very, very important then that we understand the nuts and bolts of mental afflictions, knowing what it is that triggers my mental afflictions. What's the makeup of the mindsets that lead to these mental afflictions, and know the causes that bring them about, the conditions that can trigger them. It's extremely important to get really on top of the whole makeup, the whole scenario of your mental afflictions, and then to be able to, on the one hand, spot their early arisal and put a stop to that. Or if the mental affliction has arisen, to know the antidotes to apply in order to nullify, counteract, and minimize the damage that it can do. And this is the job of spiritual practice. This is what Dharma practice means.
아니 저 나라도 토에도 코앞에서 투 그래. 코앞에서 투어도 아니 저 라게 저로 건가 저 코앞에 제도 라라 야고 삼을다나 최주에 전개 시우주에 되겠지. 그래서 거기에 라라 이네 동네 먹고 연거래. 시야라 이네 동네 나도 통부 요래. 아니 되네 예자 년조게 무가 전부 요래. 아니 뭐서 심제 탐제도 산제 고마 주비에 세다 심제도 소래. 어다란 게 틀려 이게 되게 들어와. 딜레시베 심제스도 요마도다. 랑게 칠레 유견에 거주는 타이로 막게 심제 다음 제로 왔다. 아니 심제 건데 통화이네. 아니 되게 가서 로다 그 미드 심제 따와 이네야. 아 데니라 때는 심제 대가라 때는 아니 소조 산제 고마 통그리. 산제 고마 토에 심제 딜라 때는 통보고 요래 선탁이 랑게 걸라 자네 심제도 싸지 무슨 차기 봐. 라신이가 타치바데 술라 때는 죽고 심제 딜라 때는 죽고랬어. 답변은 어제 갱거로 통화이나 월라피 통화이나 미 통화이나 다 소리지 통화이나 아니 뒤도데 에는 랑게 문에 전에 지금 심제 탐제도 산제 고마 죽고지 이나 다 심제 소리 통화이나 오 딜라 때네 나 산제 고마 더 보고 요래 오 심제 다들 에는 심제 소리나 셈 여불라예 아니 딜라 지가소라 다 지금 미게 딱 이제 티카소는 다 삼로는 장보다 장바다 세와다 아니 데데가 돈에 다 지금 가서는 배주 요바치 아니 데데지 중앙이나 아니 지금 가서는 나게다 차도다 시다스거든 지금 용사명가 소리지 가지 sem제 거기서 통화이네 어떻게 오 딜라 때는 어느 소소 산제 고마토 보고 요래 섭사지 어느 소소 산제 고마토에 유인받이 못해야지 어디 개쳐버려도
Another extremely important fact that we need to again kind of like cultivate in our whole attitude, our whole mindset, is just how precious sentient beings are, and that here that I am a being in cyclic existence. All sentient beings are beings in cyclic existence, and that if we think very, very well on this, we can understand from the suffering that we experience ourselves that all sentient beings are going through very similar kinds of suffering and even much worse sufferings as well. And so it's kind of like when we talk about wanting to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, sometimes we make it, kind of a bit unclear about what this all sentient beings means. It means the sentient beings that are right next to you, the beings that are around you every day, that you meet and greet every day, no matter how limited in number they are. These are the examples that you can use in order to really develop the massive attitude to benefit all sentient beings. And so they become extremely precious to us, that these sentient beings are the basis upon which I can create the causes to attain enlightenment. And there's nothing more precious than that. And so therefore, sentient beings become incredibly important, incredibly precious to us. And that means all sentient beings, the kangaroos, the wallabies, the people, and so on, that we can see and encounter on a regular basis, and that these are the means by which I can attain that state of enlightenment, the ultimate benefit to all sentient beings. So we have to kind of use that sort of thinking of really increasing the value of each encounter with every possible sentient being, because of this, great potential that I have by simply encountering sentient beings. Therefore, the attitudes of negative attitudes that I would have had previously, such as an arrogance or jealousy or envy or any of those attitudes, they become minimized and eradicated because I don't see human sentient beings in that context anymore. They are the potential for me to attain that state of enlightenment. They are the cause upon which I can accumulate the merit to attain enlightenment.
这当然是三这个原点就通话一呢，三这个原点我那就好搞话一呢，那sem节了点的用个有个意思，那sem节是咋就不属产业，就用个话sem节是咋就不属通业中国，他对这个sem节是咋就不是通话一呢，那对了就马个给的那sem节的就是用上面的相关。
And so it's simply saying that by understanding the qualities of an enlightened being, of a Buddha, that these are gained in reliance upon sentient beings, automatically raises the kind of value of all those sentient beings to that being something incredibly priceless and precious. That therefore, having a negative attitude towards them or having any sense of harm, intending to harm them, is completely out of the question and eradicated.
我的是，我的是，我把写我的大概那么呢，我的是，他这个的就告诉的，他这个我的是恐怕写着对军队的，我的是恐怕写着我的，大概这大家的告诉我的了，大概这说些啥的，我这的让你听的了，大概这他就推的多么写的多吧，我他我那个这在于那么一般，那么多长写的，对，突然的，就我来为什么？ 出来真的，当做了为什么的？叫这我的，可是叫多长年的起来就是，也与你了为什么的？是，他这个上面他就当家去救个，他把这叫讲不当，可是这样的了，家上面他就的家去救那么那个，第上的了，干他们给大概这， Lam Rim Menga Shuba Bacha, and this are the Jangulama Tonga Chibola, and Jangulama Tonga Chibo, Takacha, because of the Kesa Chidula Soba water, Lam is trying to cut the powders, and during the vessel or language children with the Lamana Cotti, some Delan, because of that, because of the Judici Hato, Tisham Delan, Kesa Sanjaton, the neck because of the near Saint Kiela Soba Chance of Papa. What? And there is something like any case of the Rangia Gachobata, what is Papa Church. And then the church, then a power could choose what I social Namjush when the Massa about you, something what in the commercial.
So this is the kind of these attitudes and these kinds of this kind of thinking really is something that we should spend time and effort at habituating to more and more and more. Now, with regard to today's teaching, as normally we set up the merit field to begin with. So we have visualized in the space in front of us, in nature, our own root guru, in aspect Guru Maninja Vajradhara as the central figure, seated on a throne, and with light rays emanating in all directions, establishing all of the other members and groups of the merit field, beginning with the grouping behind of the consecrated practices lineage headed by Vajradhara, and then the groups to the left and the right, being Maitreya and the extensive practices lineage, and Manjushri and the profound view lineage, with the necessary lineage lamas of those particular traditions. And on both sides, then representatives of the Kadampa schools, of the instructional school, the Lam Rim school, and the textual school. And then below them, on both sides, the lineage lamas of the Geluk tradition with Jai Rinpoche Lama Tsongkhapa at their center. And then at the foot of the throne of the central figure, we have our own teachers, at the center of which is our own root guru. And then surrounding them are the 4 classes of Tantra. And then the 1,000 Buddhas of this fortunate eon, then with the Arya Bodhisattvas and the hearers and solitary realizers and arhats, and the Datas, Dakinis, and Dharma protectors, so that we have established all of the members of the merit field there without exception.
But any there are social that time to Joe or Jama, Tuga Holy Vessel, Shila, Shima Chant, and Zao Pausta, used to know so what did you come share?
And then all the members of that merit field are marked by the syllables Hum, and with the Hum sending out light rays to the wisdom beings and inviting them to come. They come and they dissolve into all the members of the merit field. They are now empowered by the wisdom beings. Then we offer the 7-limbed practice together with the mandala offering.
Jump to the same get to change what is and then I told you that Jigla Chicken, Minia, and Chujo Suma to get the Jilla Chicken or Yati and Rangi to Lama party. And Jamula Mazonga, but she be to get Jilla Chicken, the teacher, the Katam Tenaya, because of the Jamcha and Yellow party. And then Yamich Lama, the Jilla Chicken with Yati and Kasura Tai, Chao to party. What a Lama not in the what the Yalatwa made at the Jawaki, what did the chat? And society charge, what did the chat? And then the Jawa Chant and Takanja, because of the Takanja Lamatuan to a child party, Jam Chai, the Lamatuan to a child, Rangi Jinza, Lama de Lamatuan to a child, Tatuka Koto. Yes, was some such a time, Lamatuan to a child. What did that? Jamia could do Chasso, such a what it is commercial.
And so that's the offering of the 7-limb practice. And then with time permitting, to also extend this process of offering, we offer a bath in a beautiful bathing house with fresh flowers, fresh robes, clothing that is given, ointments, incense, and so on, and perfume. And just to continue on. And then we take refuge, bodhicitta, and then we do the dissolution of the merit field, again, through from the Dharma protectors and the Datas and Akinis right up to dissolve into the our own root guru. Then all of the figures on the left and right, dissolving up until we finish with Maitreya and Manjushri. And then the consecrated practices lineage dissolving up till we are left with Vajradhara. So we're left with these five main figures of the merit field. And then the figures further dissolve from Vajradhara coming down, dissolving into the crown of the central figure, Maitreya and Manjushri dissolving in from the left and right, and our own guru coming up to the heart center and dissolving into the heart center. So now we are left with the last remaining figure of Guru Maninja Vajradhara, the essence of all refuge.
what did it? And then the Kata saw produced the Kujita Lamala 200 Charles, number 200, what is so produced the vegetation up, what did it?
And at this point, then we offer the stake-like supplication from the miraculous book of the Gelugpas. My most divine Guru, Lord of the four Kayas, I make petition to you, Guru Shakyamuni Vajradhara. My most divine Guru, Lord of unimpeded Dharmakaya, I make petition to you, Shakyamuni Vajradhara, etc.
What did it so produce? What did it check? What did it check? What did it check? That number cousin the man should then share something to social to our home down with some sort of social setup and social society change and my duty and to be over the water, cook on Chunjoji. Set up and Tara Miko come the ticket. What did it check?
And so, as I explained before, too, if employing the merit field, not just in the sense of the means by which we can engage in effective purification and accumulation of merit, but also that when we're doing meditation, say a single-pointed meditation or any other meditation, to kind of maintain the central figure of the merit field at this point, but as small as possible in order to be facilitate a more centered and strong focus.
What did it check? That the language you will tap your mother, your mother, David Dench. What the Kobasha, the Kazan, the Takajaja, Yanjo, some and it depends much like you saw some such 70. And it don't want you go at some time, and it did we put don't and it because the Tony gave a lot and because they make you watch you so certain Janju the same to some time and it did Janju the same time lot Takara and Taviki watch you so what in the conversation and then Pandit Lama with Taviki open the Kusu to Sudation and Tavika never comes to super attempts and Sanjay for Mama over the chest so what in the conversation.
So next then we prepare the seat on our own crown in order to invite the last remaining figure, the embodiment of all refuges, Guru Marinja Vajradhara. So we establish the lotus mandala seat by reflecting on renunciation, gaining that sense of wanting definite emergence from cyclic existence to bring forth and manifest that lotus. And then focusing on emptiness, the lack of inherent existence, and pausing on the mere absence of the object of negation. From that voidness, that emptiness, arises the sun disk mandala. And then by reflecting on the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, from that very contemplation arises the moon disk mandala. And so we have established this welcoming seat. And then we make the invocation prayer thrice. Oh, glorious and precious root Guru, come take your lotus and moon seed placed here on my crown. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of your body, speech, and mind. And so at the end of the first recitation, the figure moves towards our crown. At the end of the second, arrives there. And at the end of the third is established and steadfastly seated on our seat until we attain the state of enlightenment.
What did Kubasha? What did it check? What did Kubasha? The check. That the Gaso, the nigger, the Rangi Chiwala, and the Tobasha Toma. What did the Jentan, Lamatuan to Chatter, Tati, Casora Takaja, Sanjay Sanjay Goma, Mato, Patata, Mashusu, and the Chess Susu, something. What did the Kubasha? Yeah, and the Chigger. Because Tomani the Tola was a Tesha, Tomani Coati, that's how I check. Take the now ranching member. yu den tu du za me ke to me pa ta za me sa zo de de tu be bu ra xie de sa me chi ta an de de ro de de to la ra xie me be de an pe chi ka la shu yo sa ta ta pe what did the commission.
So we bring our minds to bear on our crown, where we have the figure of Guru Munindra Bhattacharya, and we rejoice in the fact that that Guru will be with us until we attain that state of enlightenment. That it is really something quite wonderful. And we take this opportunity also to reflect on emptiness, reflect that I myself lack any objective or inherent existence, that I'm merely imputed by thought, the concept that labels me as such, and that from that feeling of emptiness, that understanding of emptiness, the whole mindset transforms into bright light.
But 남주 대신 랑게 타고다 마게 섬제 탐제 유서 어때 다게 되는 시점 사고 땅 유서 섬제 제대 개체 뭐 이번 what did it.
And then, as usual, also we bring our attention to bear on the fact that we have all kind mother sentient beings all around us.
그렇죠. 다 들려줘도 아니 남님 보내야마 저기 샤폼 소로 저 다가 이제 그래서 연대 시주마 소로 들렸잖아. 아니 거신이 된전에 저 마수주 보다 아니 샤폼 지 워드네 스코 아니 들려줘 아니 그래서 남녀 소소기 다 가져 가서 다시니 된저 거래 대전이 가래 로 아니 로다 가져 저 치와미다 바데 아니 왔다 아니 연주 동네에다 왔다 들렸다가 가서 다 기부 충분히 남다 가져 구조선에 잡수죠 다 가져 잠주 semje chetene ani kibu chunjung lamdes ma inde sabshila andong pato ide compassion ani teda ti ani toba kyala padu che tiba jo ma che tuje pachante so chechen wa ta ga je nima chila je lamre shakum chasa je nima re shawanga bu chasa je jetuba ina ani di nima de ta mizi de temba chawa ta mizi de temba chawa wa what did it.
At this point, then, we normally include a glance meditation on all the different subject matter of the graduated path. And that here, it's very good to employ this using prayer called the foundation of good qualities. So we can look at very briefly go through the details relating to how to relate to a spiritual teacher, to the precious human rebirth subject, and then into death and the impermanence, refuge, how the karma and the afflictive emotions, the sufferings of the lower realms, etc., going all the way through. And in each occasion too, to employ the descending nectar light meditation of purifying all obstacles to our being able to realize the true import of all this subject matter, and also the nectar light facilitating our easy realization of the subject matter of this subject of these topics. And so this is a very useful way to kind of a very, very important sort of practice to establish on a daily basis, that we get that really first-hand experience of the graduated path.
다 쇼게데 타타타데 내가 저거 파사게나 데서 아니 소소 내가 저까라다 투사디 다 저러 같은 제 된다 다 소소게 쇼게데 남네 제네 아니 남네 제조디 샤범제네 남네 제조디 아니 소소 니리 다 내가 저거 거기네 아니 수다 투바이네 아니 디단 제와 유경 소치 다가제 소소 남네 제네다 타투다 산제 고마 주에데 아니 디체도 주고 야사 디주체도레 아삼자체 거기에 심제 로라 차투바체
So this is important to familiarize our minds with the import of the Lam Rim teachings, or the graduated path teachings, so that we actually, because of that familiarity, we take it with us then throughout the day, to our workplace, to all the people we may meet, because we have that objective in our minds, that the objective to attain liberation and the omniscient state of enlightenment. And then we can put that into context of where I am right now and how important this person or this situation is to being able to, establish the causes to fulfill those goals. And so it's kind of like alive and relevant to us throughout the day, because of the familiarity we have gained in the morning.
我的是，感觉说这个两年节当我推咱们找我钱的话，当我那真的推到马里的，是吧？他你找我说了钱，他就说个两年节的推说了是，这两马节奏说了是，当我的节奏到马里，当然我是你个节奏差点了，说是设计的两把钱都要马的，因为他南通过了那个节奏当，俺两下你要把那些俺那这个他来当我个，说个两年节搞的两下说了钱。And
so to be able to actually even label it something like that the morning glance meditation is like our absorption, and that then after we arise from that, go out into the world and do our work and so on, is our subsequent attainment, as it's called. Of course, it's not really the case here, but because in kind of formal meditations, when we're doing sessions and so on, in kind of a retreat situation, there you have your deep meditation absorption within the session, and then you have what happens like between the sessions, which is often called the period of subsequent attainment. And so here we can adopt that sort of labeling for ourselves, even though we are as beginners, and say, yes, my glance meditation in the morning was absorbed in the the subject matter of the graduated path, and so I'm keeping that sort of importance to it by referring to when I arise from that, go out into the world, engage in my daily life, and that is still connected because I'm calling it my subsequent attainment stage, where it's all that sort of subject matter, that thinking is still to the forefront of my mind.
我的了解，俺那广大年个那个的人，这把这说个南面上当公路这把那些钱的，他这个要不就人多，那么结束了，这我这要不人么多的决心车，俺那的这一家你说张介是怕的，俺那决心车，人东下起下我的的，我的这上工车，我的是
So that in the evening, then, of course, is so important. This is as much as the motivation is in the morning, in the evening, to do our check up on how we went throughout the day. So we had that, good motivation in the morning. We promised to take it into the day. How well did I do? What's my scorecard looking like today? And to be able to rejoice and dedicate all of the positive moments of that day, and also to be honest about when things did not go according to plan, and negativities arose, or I had negative thoughts and so on, and to be very conscientious about purifying them, either through the reciting of the 100-syllable mantra 21 times, the Vajrasattva mantra, or doing a practice like the confession of downfalls with the prostrations to the 35 Buddhas, etc. But that we have created another clear bookend for the end of the day, as well as the one we had at the beginning of the day.
我的是，他告诉爸爸的，我说他的，告诉他杭东告诉那的，我的那这个，他的就。俺这个，他刚才就卡萨给他们带了把车，那去给他们带了把车，他卡萨给他们带了把车的，可是他对我徐上呢，他去给他们带了把车的是，因为这他们你了，他东西全叫给洗，他们东西给洗，他们带了把车给洗，卡萨他，俺他们东西给洗，俺卡萨买一买，第开把人们都他们了查了要买的，这个是这样的。
And so we're looking at the topic called insight in the Lam Rim, in the graduated path, and that was divided into gaining ascertainment as to the selflessness of persons, and gaining ascertainment with regard to selflessness of phenomena. And we have looked into the first of these, and we're looking into the second of these now. But it should be understood that when we're talking about the selflessness of persons and the selflessness of phenomena, there is no difference with regard to the selflessness. The only difference is here regarding to the subject matter. So that both phenomena and both persons and phenomena even in terms of being absolutely empty of any intrinsic or inherent existence.
And the one is a Garsona, Rota, because of the Sunday Jomde de Suare, and the Tirias Kijaman, that is Kuran, Woburanga, Rashi Kora, Nature Law Kora, and you didn't know what chat there. That is what again the Sunday Jomde de Water, and a Cheva Jenny, and the Sunday Jomde de Cheva Chen and Niba Yimba Yinza, and the Sunday what your remando, the Sunday Luxus or the Mare. That thing called nature law. 내가 저거 뒤에 어디 맞은 거저 하고 어디 산재 소화래 다 낭바 인자 제에 때문에 말해서 계속 말해.
And so it's kind of like when we talk about this doctrine of emptiness, it's to be very clear that this is not something that was invented by the Buddha. This is the natural mode of existence of all phenomena. It's a natural phenomena. And that here it's true, the Buddha is doing practice and analysis of checking and logic and so on, that he was able to come to this understanding and then to reveal it to us. But it's certainly not something that the Buddha invented from himself. This is something that was just simply revealed because it's the natural way that phenomena exist.
저 프레어 제로도 어때도 부탁이 수업하면서 프레어 되는 제로 어떻게 기자 말이 단단데 그 최난다 랑게 최근에 집에는 그 군조배 내단지다 전답에 내단 이유고 여봐 대반이 여봐 인자 실라 대반이 여봐 인자 시고빈 내줄라 대반이 군조 대마스다 전답 대마스 이 용되게 요래 시고빈 내줄라 디 여봐 인바 인자 아니 딩뭐 맞춰봐 이나 아니 뭐죠 딩와 맞으면 온게 아니 소소 거베 전도 좀마도 메도베 동에들 용들이 여봐 아니 이 요에서데 산제 콩게다 아니 깨바네 깨바바도 깨바체는 못해봐 인상 아니 세베 돈에 알아들 도만이 말다 알아들 때문에 말이야.
So this is not something that we simply can have some sort of like a prayer in a book that we recite and so on, and that suffices as far as gaining what's necessary from this doctrine, but it's rather to understand that phenomena, that all phenomena have the status of the what are called the two truths, conventional truth and ultimate truth, and that this on the basis of these truths, then we can achieve the ultimate goals in Buddhism, in what the Buddha has taught and so on. But it's also through being ignorant of these two truths that we are finding ourselves in a situation where we constantly cannot get what we want and constantly inundated by what we do not want. And so it's kind of the absolutely key issue with regard to the gaining of ultimate happiness. And so it's something that the Buddha, from eon to eon, through his training and analysis, came to understand unmistakenly and clearly. And so he is able to reveal that to us. That's why, it seemed to be the unique quality of the Buddha's teachings.
다 실을 대반이 여바 인상 시코랑 내달을 대반이 여바 인상 아니 로 대반이 여바 인상 아니 데 람라야 탑신이 용되게 요래.
So on the basis of these two truths then comes the two main aspects of the path itself, the path of method and the path of wisdom.
니 용되고 다 람라 탑다 실을 용거 여바 인상 아니 디 제보들라야
And because of them being able to accomplish these two aspects of method and wisdom of the path, in the result, the two bodies of the Buddha, the form body and the wisdom body, are made possible.
군조가 쳐다 돈다베 쳐진 연구 매바이나 아니 람라 탑진이 용해요 말해 람라 탑진이 용해 매바이나 아니 제볼래 군이 용해 거라요 말해.
And then, of course, contrary to that, if one doesn't have the understanding of the basis of phenomena being the two truths, then that follows that one does not have the basis of practice of the collections of merit and wisdom. And without being able to engage in merit and wisdom, we cannot gain the refuge or the result of the two bodies of form and wisdom body.
아니 가서 제복군이 여바데 람탑신이 여발을 뜨고 요래 람탑신이 여바데 아니 가서 시 대반이 여바들 뜨고 요래 시 대반이 매나 용해 거라 요 말이 어때.
And so it follows then that the two results of form and wisdom body come from the two paths of method and wisdom, and they in turn are based on the two bases of the two truths of conventional and ultimate truth.
근데 상계에서 당번에 상계 제가 인데가 얼마 누바체 인데가 요말 본 줄을 땡고 요라데 람탑진이를 땡고 람탑진이 근데 용한데 가서나 아니 시 대반이 주 여바 인상디 용한테 요바.
So this demonstrates that the figure of the Buddha, the state of enlightenment, is not something that arises spontaneously or miraculously, but is based on a solid path, in specifically these two paths of merit and wisdom, and a method and wisdom. And of course, these two paths in turn are founded on the two truths. So it's showing that this is a path that's based on the generation of causes.
내가 좀 싶어도 것이 그래서 다 시대만 예수도 왔다 어디서 다들 이제 뭐 인자 아니 시대만 이게 내주 야고 시험이나 아니 람태신이 주당의 내주도 야고 생그래 람탑신이 주당의 내주도 야고 시험이나 아니 산제 고마 토백이 아니 니와디 니었고 도와 토백이 요바다 하고 도와 때마다 시대만 이게 도다 마시 아니 들라데는 람탑신이 요단 마시 들은 제부분이 요다는 시기마 다 되지도 되고 아니 타바다 탐제 잡아서 그다 다가 똑소리 쌤 다가 쇠샤조리 어느 가서 블라인드 패드레스 근데 요스기로 다 된 가서 내주 마신 다 시대 바지게 내주 약고서 들라데는 람탑신이 용초고 람탑신이 되게 요바이나 아니 제부분이도 용초서도 곧 릭투베 제부 용다지고 전에 아니 시행관지로 와.
So this is a very, very important point because we need to gain this the overall structure of the path in order to gain conviction in what we're doing. And so here, that it's the important basis of the two truths that giving rise to kind of validates the path of method and wisdom, that in turn gives us the credibility of the two bodies of the Buddha as the result, and gaining conviction in that there is a logical progression from the basis through the paths to the results. This is something that is not just logical, but realistic and valid and validated. Otherwise, I think that we can, often find ourselves in a situation where we're contemplating the idea of enlightenment itself and gaining sort of a superstitious, blind faith belief in it without having any foundation to it. And this is coming from really not knowing this essential structure of the path, going from basis through path into result. And so it's very, very important that we gain this kind of understand this structure of the path.
내가 전부 찾아와 내가 전부 찾아 다들 뭐 다 간제 저 가서라 다 간제 단다디 가서 다들 먼저 때려 봐야 돼. 다 간제 저 가서라 동반이 때는 법에 다가 제 신고빈 내수 때는 법 신고빈 내수를 법을 또 다가 다 실라 아니 군조 때마다 다 봤어도 아니 제 가서라 다가 먼저 낭수 때 담을 참 마셔봐 전에 낭수 때 담을 참 마셔봐 전에 다가 제바 제온도 다가 제바 제온도 아니 제 가서데 낭수 대담을 참 마셔봐 전에 아니 바 제바 제온도 아니 뭐 여기 내수 봐 제바 제온도 다 유대는 맞주바지 유대는 맞주바지 다 차로 그래 유대는 맞주바지 다 가자 유대는 다 많이 받죠 와 많이 받지 가르다 된 거였으나 가서 뭐 쉬잘 받다 가르다 된 거였으나 많이 받에 매배 되 많이 받죠 많이 받에 유대는 맞주베 되잖아 많이 받들라 때는 거다 유나 다 유대는 주바이나 세서들 니고다 니고 요마 많이도 가르다 된 거였으나 그 매배 되 맞죠 많이 받에 다 가자 나와 딱이 매봐 나라도 나와 따라 아니 게 매봐지 매봐 많이 받지 매봐 많이 받지 다 여다들 근데 많이 받에 갔다 그러서나 그 때는 중앙 임바 인자 때는 중앙 임바 인자 거다 유대는 니고요 말이야 그와 유대는 니고요 말이야 왔다 가자 많이 받대 매배 되 먹었잖아 많이 받대 때는 중에 돈 것도 그렇지 아니 때는 중앙 되는데 아니 유대는 맞으면 되는 것도 그렇지 왔다 들에 중앙 임바 이나 아니 뭐 이게 내주 다 돈다 데 바시엘라 돈다 데 바시엘라 다 가자 람녀도 녀도 두고 와 거든지
So that approaching this whole doctrine of emptiness through the process of the two truths, understanding both the conventional and then ultimate truth. And that here it's the question of analyzing the way phenomena appear to us, by through that gaining an insight into actuality, into the way actually phenomena really do exist. And so here it's this looking for the way in which objects appear, as in objectively existent, and trying to find it. But then not finding that, it's very clear that this not finding does not result in the complete lack of existence of that phenomena, but it contradicts the way in which it appears. And it also implies that because that phenomena lacks any objective existence, it arises in dependence. It's a dependent arising, dependent origination. And so it's really working with these two sides, this looking into, the lack of objective existence or independent existence or intrinsic existence of persons or phenomena, and understanding that phenomena do not exist or cannot exist in that way, but that does not infer that they lack complete non-existence, they existence completely, but that they are actually arising independent, and they are arising independence. They are dependent arisings. So it can, because things arise in dependence, they cannot possibly exist objectively, etc., etc. And so once we can become more familiar with this, we become more familiar with the ultimate truth.
그러니까 이제 랑원의 주바이나 아니 주와 매게 때도 내게 주고 그뒤에 유 그뒤에 유 아니 전에 이만은 줄에 때 매번 차도 그래 줄에 때 그거 쳐요 말이야 그래서 주다 깨다 근데 때 뭐도 그 가서 그 랑원의 주마도 다 된 거예요 랑원의 주부 여와 이래 주다 깨라 때요 말 아니 전에 이마자 랑원의 주바이나 아니 그 주와 천태 매번 그러나 나라도 베나 부구때 라왕의 두바이나 부구 첨부 차이요 말이야. 부구때 라왕의 두바이나 아니 부구 다다 코랑게 내세 그다 되마다 쉐리 야게 줘요 말. 거기서 라왕의 두바이는 주와 몇개 solid 지은 거다. 거기 주와 있어도도 거기 라왕의 두마도 왔잖아. 깨를 때봐 주다 깨를 때봐 다 된 거. 주다 깨를 때고 여봐 인사 안고 라왕의 두다. 코니 가와래. 라왕의 두바다 라왕도 마주가 니데 가와래 와. 직연의 직내 두고 뭐 직내는 직내 두고요 말이야. 공공가스 차를 봐. 로 가서는 뭐죠? 나와도 민반이 차를 봐. 지금 여러 직내 두고 말. 와다디 그 리베그 조단 중루 뒤 조단의 심어이나. 근데 리베그 조단의 심어이나. 아니 리바 딜 때네. 때네 라완도 좁두고면 도스. 라완도 좁아 이바이나. 라완도 좁아 이나. 아니 그 조아테 매바 차두고. 조아테 매바 차와이나. 아니 겨왕같이 신도 샤두고 말해. 겨왕같이 쓰도 지금 가서 지금 레상에 다 아니 되게 다 아니 지금 가서데 그래서 가자 지금 가서데 레지 사체네 안 din남셰게도 바자샤 안 스틸스 바수가 세트업네 아니 이게 된데도 좀 되거든 된데 좀다 샤두고 말아 그 라와도 좀 있나 거기도 때 뭐가 차고 봐 아니 겨왕같이 샤두고 뭐도 아니 당연히 세게 아니 당연히 제가 타바도 탐지 좀 샤두고 뭐도 다 라와도 마주가 이마 인사 겨왕같이 샤두고 요래 아니 당연히 세게 코아당 타바 탐지 좀 샤두고 요래 코 가서 주민자 줄을 때는 아니 저거 민자와 이마 있다 데레질라 코아스 그래 안 데레질라 타바스 그래 쓰는 코 가서 주쟁기 내단에 되는 코 대세 자외 좀 그래 되면은 라와도 좋아하는 타바도 탐지 좀 샤두고 말해 가서 라와도 좋아하자 타바 탐지 좀 샤는 리베 넘어 봐고 그래 겨왕아지 샤두고 말해 라와도 좋아하자 겨왕아지 샤바 있는 리베 넘어 봐고 그래 다 라와도 마주가 이마 인사 리베 넘어 싸워지는 거 말해 리베 넘어 마바 마세 잡게 그 참아요 잡게 그 참아요 다 라와도 마주가 잡게 그 참아요 와다데 이마 인사 좀대 초 망군데 삼로다네 와다 라와도 나야도 남게도 돼 나와 나시 좀도 삼삼지 다 좀다 다 세줘서다 니고 뭐도 하고 다 마주가 다 최샤 삼사전 다 이제 녀번제 또 받지 소구고요 어때
So this state of inherent intrinsic existence, or something established through its own power, another way of putting it, or established from its own side, these all are similar synonyms for this lack of objective existence, lack of independent existence. And it's very important to say that, okay, if phenomena did have this objective or existence or existing in terms of their own power, it would mean that there could be no change, there could be no alteration whatsoever in that phenomena, that cause and condition could not act on that phenomena. They would fall outside of that. And so it's kind of like that they prove that any analysis of such a phenomenon proves it to be impossible and absurd. Say a child, for example, who was objectively existent, could not ever grow up, could not change, could not gain an education, could not show any signs of change. Otherwise, it would disprove the fact that it was operating under its own power or objectively existent. Because it objectively existent means that it is outside the kind of law of cause and effect of cause and condition. And so we have to use our reasoning in this way to understand that the fact of the lack of objective existence immediately implies that phenomena arise independent. They can only exist independent upon cause and condition, cause and effect, parts, etc. And that this is the way in which they exist. And that these two positions, the one of objective existence and the other of arising independence, are mutually exclusive. That when you have one, the other cannot be present or exist or be validated, and so on. So we have to understand that it's one or the other. And when we use our reasoning and look at it in depth, we can easily understand that phenomena lack any of this self-poweredness or self-powered way of existence. And furthermore, that this self-powered existence, if it were to be true, it would invalidate and contradict the possibility of past and future lives, having any sense of the validity of cause and effect, whereby we accumulate causes, we lay down imprints on the mind. These will then meet with cooperative conditions that give rise to a result. All of that becomes impossible in an objectively existent world. So therefore, we can see that this contradicts the way we actually see the world naturally, the natural way of things. And so it becomes more and more an impossibility for us. And so it's very important for us to understand that, with phenomena as objectively existent, something like liberation is impossible. The attainment of enlightenment, it becomes impossible. And then when we look at the opposite, that which is mutually exclusive to that position, that phenomena arise in dependence. They are dependent originations, that they arise in dependence upon cause and condition, etc. This allows for everything to be possible. The attainment of liberation, the attainment of the state of enlightenment, that the law of cause and effect is again validated. And so we can understand that when we analyze one side of this, the side that is accepting the lack of objective existence, and that in turn implying that phenomena arise in dependence, that side is, when you look more and more into it, is further more and more backed up by valid reasoning. Whereas if you try to validate the idea of phenomena being objectively existent, etc., that is not backed up by valid reasoning. And that's a further reasoning for validating the one and for negating the other. And so we gain this sort of really strong understanding of the fact that when we are going about our lives, that what appears to us, we become more and more distrustful that it actually exists in the way it appears. So we can say, oh yes, it appears like this, but that is not the way the phenomena actually exist.
我这里讲，大概这这这大概这个告诉了，当我说我那说那也的语言中文那我到这的，到底告诉了这我这个他妈没办呢，我把书全部要完钱，我这里这往，俺这大概这个我说这告诉的这个我的他妈没办呢，我把全部要完，怎么噻？呀，这告诉的。 反正我这个，反正出路了，查下吧，呢，他这个南瓜蛮多，俺出路什么个大都这么点这个哟，大都嘛这个蛮多时候，但是在这个缺的结吧呢，在这大这么点个缺这个，但结吧呢，你要叫把家属切的就当这个多，这当面这个可是出路刚刚了，这个可是讲吧的你了，上回老在他们不有话的，呢大约看呢呀，这个大都这么大。 다도 매번 kelling 남과 주고 봐. 출루 시바지 제가 이네 다도 주바지 다 남주다 지 다도 주바 지 나라들라 지 예와 대가도 좀 대원기야 다도 주바지 이 다도 주바 숙체도 체도 당 되게 제도 제가 잡아다 니절라서 3빌럽다 연대다 망고시다 요할때 이나야 다도 주바지 숙체다 때도 당데도 모두는 코알에 대해서 찾을 거야. 찾을다. 다 내가 뭐저 교주 제가 말해. 딱 뭐여기 내주 돈다. 我有个那就他们或者张不张下个呢？我有个那就在那带的，啊不，我这里是上面当我就，安尼哦吼，安尼打这个打买不是个的了，但中在都那上面当的，安尼国际有个，安尼家电什么有吧？安尼打的主吧，这都变得恰吧呢？大概老板那些，不过打的主吧，那不建了，国际的建电话卡，不建吧打的主吧伊呢？ 거기에 또 보고 토마케에서 버테 샤요 말에 가스나고 마케베 뷰요 말아 거기 라와데 주바이나 티케발 티마케발 시도 고 라완의 마주베 다 된거요 봐. 케바의 라완의 주바에 거두이네 게 되거든. 어디 얼굴 데레서 리퍼 노 바기도 와. 좋아. 리퍼 노 바기도 와. 거두이네 깨게만 되는 거지. 아마 시다 장선. 그 점점 마케서 고 라완 마주베 다 된거요 봐.
So, so this process of disbelieving in the way that phenomena appear to us is quite difficult because of the fact that we have been habituated to believing in appearance since beginningless time, and so it's a really difficult one to get over. But we have to constantly remind ourselves, that phenomena do not exist in the way that they appear, and they exist by being imputed a rising independence. And it's very important. And this is something that is, quite a point of difference between Buddhism and other spiritual traditions. As wonderful as the other spiritual traditions and their teachings on loving kindness and compassion, etc., are, they all accept some sense of objective existence, of inherent existence. In fact, even from their kind of like tenet systems assert the objective existence, because they have this fear that if phenomena lack any objective existence, they feel that they don't exist at all. They fall into that extreme of nihilism. And so that is a demarcation point between other spiritual traditions and the unique doctrine of the Buddha. And so here it's kind of like, again, not a criticism of other spiritual traditions, but really pointing out the reality of the situation. That's all. That they, really wonderful to have all these spiritual traditions, but just a simple difference in terms of their view. And it's very clear too that from our point of view, when you talk about, if phenomena did exist objectively or inherently, and then really it makes impossible anything really. That like we talked about the child who is never going to grow up, and because there can be no change. But even the point of a child being born, that even at that birth would never finish. There would be constantly being born because it could not have any change. And again, I was pointing out that how do you say, infinite birth of being born, it would be very difficult on the mother.
그래서 다도 마주 말했을 야 체달을 놓에 내가 요가 있대 야 심지어 감도 몇번 나서 봐 인자 리카시라 다도 좀 때도 그 거바 차들이요 그 다도 마주 맞대 말에 다도 좀 때만 있나 야 딜라데네 수짐 소야 서바 거에 지바타야 라서 봤는데 이게 야 이제 가서 벌써 딱 가자죠 타고 참 뭐냐면 제도로 와 아까 그래 우게 요래 어떻게 얘는 다도 뭐 이게 저도 다도 마주 맞다 다도 좀 이마 이나 리그레 좀 어떻게
And so, this is not a simple issue that, on the one hand, it is a topic that the notion of the true existence of a self can be quite readily contradicted using valid reasoning. We have seen that. We know that. But there are some groups and some types of persons for whom the lack of inherent existence or lack of objective existence is too dangerous a notion that they feel that they fall into that nihilism again. But that would mean that so much more is kind of meaningless if that was the case. And so it's kind of like it's not for everybody. And so there are those who are more comfortable by maintaining that phenomena and self and so on do have some sort of objective and independent existence, and it's because of that that they then can practice, ethics, patience, and good qualities of generosity, and so on. And they accept a kind of an ethical basis for life, and without that, then they would feel completely lost and despair. So it's kind of there are different levels of the way in which one can engage with this information. But ultimately, we have to accept that the phenomena lack any true existence, any objective or inherent existence, and that they are merely imputed, and so on.
다도 뭐죠? 다도 베트디나 시작 잡은 다가자 가사다로 초기 때문에 다가자 다 초기 다음에 달라 법지다 초기 다음에 달라 달라 법내서 검출을 니체 다 검출을 니체는 다가자 주제라시 매번 달라 법주직다 도마저라시 매번 달라 법주스 니체
And so then we have looked at the gaining ascertainment with regard to the selflessness of persons, and now we are looking at the gaining ascertainment, how to habituate to gaining ascertainment as to the selflessness of phenomena. And this has two subsections. One is the gaining ascertainment as to the lack of inherent existence of compounded phenomena, and gaining ascertainment with regard to the lack of inherent existence of uncompounded phenomena.
어제 다가 이제 맞아 다들 저 신난 거 최타여만 주요데 최타여만 주요데 다 니나 두대 요라 야난 두제데 야난에 딱바리 그와 딱바리 다 두제도 도마지 최니스나 두대 요래
So
니네 최 요마리 왔다 뒤에서
So the reason for these two subheadings is that they really encompass all of phenomena. Phenomena are kind of like limitless in number, but they can be subsumed into these two categories of basically compounded phenomena, which takes in impermanent phenomena, and uncompounded phenomena, referring to more permanent phenomena.
다다데 우리가 가서 두제 달라 밥주들라 다 담보들라 달라 밥주들라 다 숨제 다가 다들 두제들 다 가져 지다 두제 저 타여봐 요다 이나요 이게 대저 숨나라 두대겠지 어느 배부 제바 때문에 두제스 보다 디숨나라 다 두제 이나 디숨부 가로 입에 차버렸다.
So with regard to the first, then looking into the selflessness of or the lack of inherent existence of compounded phenomena, these are again subsumed into three different categories. Excuse me. And so saying that they include matter, consciousness, and what are named as non-associated compositional factors, which really mean a category into which anything that is not matter and not consciousness is put. And so it's saying that although compounded phenomena, again, are limitless in number, they are all summarized into these three categories.
어디 저저 다 된데 맞아 로다 어디 당보들라 그래서 배시 때문에 되죠 숨내서 다 당보네 류다불로 쳐봐이나 다 류라 쳐봐이나 샤르 되제 제사 야랑아 총삼 제사 류디 등도 다 류디 등도 똑배 땅점 마인베 랑은의 주변 류시 여봐이나 다 여봐이나 샤르 되제 제사 야랑아부터 소상진 류디다 직도 주범 다 대결을 땅과 잡아다 잡고 집어지자 소다 직도 주범 거다 직도 타대 뉴스를 셰프 주지 매와 인사 다 담아 다 직도 주범 야나 타대도 주 다 당보다나 샤리 되제 게서 야라가 소상진 류디 아니 다도 파며 쿠자 레 주베 임베 남셰 주베 실 주베 다 쿠자기 틱바 대야 야랑가 초삼지 묘수죠. 특별히 야랑가 초삼지 묘수죠 왔다. 야랑가 요바 신도 야라다 통보래 야랑가 요바 신도 류자 야랑가 초배서 류가 줄라. 다들 말이야 타데도 좀 슬라바이나 라운드 좀 다시 좀 타데도 좀 슬라나 타데도 좀 바이나 아니 골라서마 레레네 세베스 주소 류디워셰 대주 거발에 대주 민도베 대다 수야 류테네 민도 냠데 녜셰 장네 나다 정치 제도 저 어디다 그저 어디서 고바셰자 어디서
And so there follows then an argument proving the lack of an inherent existence of compounded phenomena to begin with, and it begins with looking at the argument against the inherent existence of an example of matter. And here it takes the body as an example. So it defines the body as that which is the mere collection of flesh and bone and the 5 limbs, counting the head as one limb. And so it's saying that this body then is not regarded as something that is merely imputed by thought, but that it exists from its own side. And so then, if that's the case, this body, which is the mere collection of flesh and bone and the 5 limbs, is either one with the body or separate from the body. And so here we again, as you will be reminded, we're using the reasoning concerned with the 4 key points that we have just covered. That if a phenomena is truly existent or objectively existent, it must be one with the body or separate from the body. And so then it looks at looking at these two then. And so it's saying that then that if it was the first case, that if it was one with the body, then this body, which is the mere collection of the 5 limbs and the flesh and bone and so on, it arose from the combination of sperm and egg of father and mother, and then formed the basis on which then consciousness entered. But it would mean that this drop of the combination of the sperm and egg would itself have to be the fully formed collection of the 5 limbs, and that saying that these 5 limbs likewise then would mean that the body also would have to be 5 bodies, each with a collection of 5 limbs, because there can be no separation if they're meant to be truly one with the body. And so these arguments contradict the possibility of any such entity being possible. And then it looks at the other argument, say that if they are not proven to be one with the body, then are they separate from the body? And truly separate meaning. And so here it's the process of isolating these different limbs and different parts, such as the head, etc., taking them all apart, and then what remains should be a clearly visible body. But that is not the case. Such a body is not apparent when you take away all the different parts and separate it out. And so again, this contradicts the fact that it could be truly separate from the body. And so here then we have to conclude that this body, in the way I perceived it, is absolutely not possible, is not there. And so we have to have that thought, and then to gain conviction with that, to induce conviction in that fact using the methodology as was explained before.
어떤 나 간제 저기 가서도 다 간제 저기 간제 그 루스인데 가서도 나왔다게 아니 루랑와도 좀 나왔다게 아니 루지 여봐 이나 아니 근데 다 가서도 야랑가 있대네 다 니고 그래 다 니고도 왔다 되게 제가 제가 니가 요 말이야. 많이 가르다 된 것은 뭐 매매다 말이야. 매매다 말인데 많이 받을 가르다 것은 류지 좀다 되게 좀 매봐지. 좀다 되게 좀 매봐지. 다 류지 가르쳐 좀 말해서 류지 야라가 속담 될 때도 아니 류스는 다 가서 레벨스 그래. 다 가서 민점 다점 왔다 되게 다 류 고치고요. 대대지게 류 고쳐 두고요. 대대 잡고 류 지게 닦아서 고치고요. 류 매번 말해. 여바디 건데서는 대대게 야랑가라 아니 루스 아니 소소가 야랑가들라 게 루스 다시고요. 야랑가들라 다 될래 셰베 아니 루지 제가 주는 니가 말이야. 다 매번 말해. 여바디 소소 노예 주고요. ruwa ta kaja ni ruwa ta ni je pena yala nga de ta lakwa ta kangba la so gola so wa pena lakwa se de ta de zomo ta lakwa pena lakwa ye so de lakwa ye la zomo nga yo de zomo nga tige ta zomo nga ta party ta tige kanga la lakwa sta sha de ba ya lakwa se cho na ni ge yo ma de manye de ka sa lakwa me be ta re ma re manye ka sa lakwa rawan do ma tu ba chen 야 주고 다 되게 그 플람 시그라 다 되게 강가란 낙과서 민다 샤과 어때 어떡하지 딱 가봐 제가 저 빼다 주고스 라바 이네 다가라 주고스 그 주고 조사 요발서다 딱 파지 가서 다파 야와지 채원데 주고 니가 말이 아니 주고 매 말이야 말이 다 같이 가르다 된 것은 나라 주고 주고 조사 요발서 나와도 증거에서 견대지 요르스는 왔다 견대지 싸워지는 매디겠지 나 여다데 때문에 딱 삼소르지 나 견대지만 또 매디겠지
So here we're looking at the body, and it's the idea that the body is as it appears to us, and that we should have no issue with that. But when we look for that, because it appears as if it really existed from its own side, it existed independently, intrinsically, and so on. But when we actually put that to analysis and we actually look for such a body that we think exists like that, we do not find that. We do not discover that such a body exists. And that here, that but not finding that does not infer that it does not exist. That should be observed to us because we can clearly experience our own body, yeah? But what it should infer to us is that this body does not exist in that way, the way I kind of always have accepted it to exist. It exists in some other way, that it's merely imputed by thought. It's merely labeled in dependence upon, for example, its parts, in dependence upon the five limbs, the flesh and blood, and so on, as is described. And so that then, we look into that as being something valid. Such a body can exist. Such a body, it's right to think that it can exist in such a way. So it exists merely being labeled on the basis of its parts. And so we often think, that, this body I have, or limbs and so on, is my body. We have to put a layer of extra in existence onto it. And so this is what we're trying to negate, that it does not have that much existence. But it does exist. We know that because we can experience it to exist. And we can look into the parts of the body in a similar way. Look at the hand. And so, in one sense, that hand appears as if it really has some sort of objective existence of its own. But we see that it is made up of the four fingers and the thumb. And it arises, it's merely labeled as hand in dependence upon this collection of four fingers and a thumb. And so that's the way it validly exists. It's okay to exist like that. And so again, we look into something even smaller than that and take a single finger and say, okay, that appears as if it existed. Really, that's definitely an objectively existent finger. But when you look for that, you do not find such a finger. And again, you must have to be able to validate that finger, its existence in dependence upon its parts. It arises merely labeled as finger in dependence upon a valid basis of designation and so on. So this is the way in which we do things. So we kind of say, things appear to us, but we must kind of counteract this easy acceding to the way in which they appear. They do not exist in the way they appear. We must not apprehend them mentally to exist in the way that they appear, because that is an error.
或者大家这个这个这大家去跟那当去能大去跟这些没一那样，去跟这些没一那样，那也得了，可以遇到个足够多少有嘛说是那个有的，那个来当过个那我呢这个这些。我打的几个月的，那常常个老几个月的，现在我有那做了的主要的是呢，我打买这个吃，买大的干都是有啥的了，再去的，那呢，这啥的了，再去的一个月吧。但你个买的对大看打这个月的是那个，我打今年先就准备把去打这个月吧，今年先就准备把去打这个月，但现在买嘛的是那下头嘛，可是我是两月这个月，我基本都我就2月吧。是吧？俺你眼绿哪里多？这里眼绿全部没多死。俺这来的俺们俺来做个意思，他没3个月了，开你几个月吧，是吧？本来下完，当我这绿了6个月是那哪啥的9个月是那我这 lockdown 真下月了吧？所以我的有这个月，我打的这，但感觉这个那个上这个绿就月吧人的，现在要绿的再去对1个月嘛，但没你把的看打这个月是那绿的，没你把的买不着了嘛，没你把的。가서라다 때려 줘야 돈을 거니 라와도 맞아 때려 줘야 돈을 거두었지 어디는 딱 고바시에 맞아 어디는
So this is the case for all inner and outer phenomena whatsoever, that they they appear to us as if there's something that can be pointed at. But when we put it to analysis and search for that, we do not find that. And that again and again to understand that that's the way it is. And that the mistake that we are making is profound, because it's because we grasp onto or hold onto or accept phenomena the way they appear, accept phenomena as being objectively existent, that we distinguish between self and other, this and that. And this gives rise to all our attachment and all our aversion. And this, of course, lays down the imprints on our mind. And so it's a key issue for us, that's sure that when we look for phenomena to exist in the way it appears and don't find it, it does not mean that it lacks any existence. It means that it lacks that kind of existence. And it's a sign that things are not established in the way they appear, and we must kind of feed our mind, cultivate this attitude of mind again and again. So we must also, of course, at the same time understand, of course, that my body, for example, may lack objective existence, but I know it exists in some sense because I have that experience of that. I have feelings. My body feels comfortable or uncomfortable. My body feels sick. I need to go to the hospital with that body. I need to give that body medicine, and so on and so on. And that in its body now is in lockdown, for example, because of a particular virus, and we have to bear the brunt of that. But here, it's very important that yes, we have this contaminated set of aggregates, including a contaminated body aggregate. And that is, that the not finding of such a body under analysis, not finding of such a body in the way it appears under analysis, is the sign that it arises in dependence. It arises in dependence upon causes and conditions, etc., and merely being labeled on the basis of its parts. And so this is something that we kind of habituate the mind to again and again and again and again and again.
오다 대체만 되는 가려 거였으나 안에 되는 풍불라 미백이 안에 가서도 창당의 로마기를 팽거 왔다 가자 풍불라 와도 두번 나와도지 에 들려되는 창당의 로마 무시게 거요. 다 되는 이마다 코 나야라고 두번 난게 열때 얘네야 진짜시 매 삼달래도 안에 코 창당의 로지 숙소도 좋고 다들 모습도 또나 안에 코 매부 찾아온 거. 왔다 가자 지금 코 내가 찾고 pen 찾아봐이나 바나 가서 좋아하는 주마켄게 아니 대우신 안 달랑도 주바이나 그 달랑도 땅에 열때 이내 때모하는 신게 아니 달랑도 셈바도 요마와 그 때모 땅에 속에 달랑도 삼다 땅에 열때 이내 프랑게 땅원 땅에 열때 나와는 신 요마래 삼삼게 예바 띵는 예대요 와 예바 띵는 예도 그 신거 열바 거기 시부타도 하고 요라 다디네 동반 얘기라 제바 제네 아니 예반 얘기인데 나에다 제바 좀 나게 나왔다도 매 유다도 나게도 나왔다도 매 답답하게 왔다던데 지게 주마켄 신체네 아니 최 탐정이 내다한테 나와 나에 제바 좀 나게 나왔다도 매서 주마켄게 아니 랑게 집에 달라마 이방 예반 나 신체 아 롤 찾고 가지고 요다 지날 때나 아니 창당을 놓기고 두 개를 마개월 팽구요 봐 어떠네.
And so the importance of this point, cannot be overstated. That it is again through our acceding to the way phenomena appear. That means that we think they have this objective, independent existence that gives rise to all the attachment, the minds of attachment that we have towards what we like out there, and the aversion again to what we dislike. And that, of course, is a very serious issue for negative karmic imprints on our mind. And this is why it's so important that being able to correct this error of perception is very, very key to being able to reduce these instances of attachment and aversion and ultimately to eradicating them. And so here we need to familiarize ourselves into kind of like looking at the phenomena, like that example of the magician I gave last week or a few weeks back, where you have a magician casting spells on some stones and giving rise to horses and elephants. And so you have an audience watching this. Now the audience see horses and elephants, but so does the magician. But the magician knows that they do not exist in the way that they appear. They are merely, a kind of spell arising from a spell that he has control over. So he knows the facts of the matter. And we have to get ourselves into the position of the magician, that familiarizing ourselves that, yes, phenomena arise as if they really did have objective or independent existence, but I know that they do not exist in that way. That is a false appearance to my mind. They do not exist in the way that they appear. And so I need to become more and more familiar with that. And that, again, by looking at all of this, to gaining a sense of really strong conviction in the way that, on one hand, that phenomena certainly do not exist in the way that they appear, and then conviction in what that indicates, what that implies, that it implies that phenomena arise in dependence. They arise in dependence upon, as dependent arisings.
我这里说，他看这和怎么一般现在，俺那国的当都有嘛的，国的当嘛都对，俺那有么解都有嘛，他可能那个得差的嘛，我这怎么一般嘛现在，俺那我这先把这差当落解不多。
So it's like being fooled, like on one hand we are fooled into believing that phenomena exist in the way they appear. And that gives rise to then all this attachment and aversion and laying down these imprints and so on. It's telling here. Here we are determining not to be fooled any longer, and not being fooled means that we see the phenomena arising, but we don't believe that it exists in the way it appears, and therefore we're not going to in any way feed the mental afflictions. So it's extremely important.
다 되나 그 남자다 그 동반이게 되고 남장 뭐저 또 장화장자 다는 뭐저 준비해야 돼 최종 시험데 딜 때는 또 하고 받자 딱 그래서 제가 지고 딱 뭐저 양내 양도 삼로다네 아니 가서 다 지금 가서 최종 시험 달라 마셔 왔잖아 아니 준비하고 받대 아니 양내 양도 다 제가 쟤네 아니 가서 제가 쟤네 다 처음 내 삼로다 좀제 먹을래 거네 삼로다한테 다 라와도 마주가지 뭐지 쳐서나 다 좀제 처음 먹을 삼로다 다 예바시야서나 아니 거기 삼중 시험 쓰고 다 되네 아니 좋아했게 두고 와 아니 되네 삼중 예바 다가 랑가라 아니 셈 제주도 산 다가자 니가 제주도 전에 아니 가서 검중 시험 깨도 맞지 검중 시험 깨 어때 되네 로다 막 검중 시험 깨 봐야 다 돈이 무슨도 또 와이나 다 아니 매 삼로 땅국어 말이야 지난 그 컨디션 나와 이면 나라라신 매왔다 나에다 라신 나와다 야도는 좀 당게 심제 인사베잖아 다 산제이나 아니 가서 라신 그 좀한테 딱 가져데 나의 라신 그 좀나 라신 그 마주 만난게 제 산제 제주래 먼저 심제 인사베잖아 아니 컨디션 그래 나는 라와도 좀 당게 돼 나와다데 마주 받대 얘가 띵 줘봤지 유아 매겠지 딜라데는 차다 로케 모두 중으로 왔다디 그 검증이 시럽게 로아 베너 톨람 소탐 왔다 되게 어디서
So of course, this is an attitude of mind that cannot simply be immediately, mastered. That we are, as it were, beginners very much, and that we're operating with what is referred to as the wisdom arising from learning. Now, we're giving the kind of a basic data as to phenomena appearing in this way, that we do not further believe in that appearance and so on. And this is the wisdom arising from learning. What we need to do from here on in then is to really embrace reasoning, valid reasoning, as much and as frequently as possible, and come at the topic from many different angles using many different reasons to understand why it is that phenomena do not exist in the way they appear, and what that definitely implies. And that implies that they are dependent arisings. And to familiarize ourselves with that is to develop the wisdom arising from contemplation. And that this is where we gain conviction in what we have understood. And so we are now very, very clear on the way phenomena exist and the way they do not exist. And so then we bring that to a meditative session where we can meditate single-pointedly on what we have gained conviction in, until the point that we gain a direct realization of selflessness. And this is the wisdom arising from meditation, the third type of wisdom. And so this is where then we no longer have any need for analysis, that even when we arise from our meditative session, we see phenomena arising, but we no longer believe that they exist in the way that they appear. We are very clear on that, and we're very sure on that. And so this is a tremendous kind of like point of realization, that this is a kind of like the point at which we reach the path of seeing, and that tremendous demarcation point for practitioners.
네, 근데 낭백이 중루고 토네 다 낭도리과 토네 시에스인데 먼저 최종의 시험달라 빈거요 말 검종의 시험 깨고요. 그래서 서티피케트 맞으면 소문 요구다. 당고 최종 조다시의 서티피케트 최종의 시험 지게고도. 다 디서 맞으면 최종의 시험 깨봤디 아니 양의 양도 아니 셰바체네 아니 가서다 제komchen 삼로다네 가서다 삼종의 셰랍제고도 다 삼종의 셰랍제네 예바니도 데데가 사티피카 찍고도 다데 예바니베 되더라 다 세지도 겁네 아니 무슨 또 송구다 검종의 셰랍세 깨고도 다 사티피카 숨 참면은 먼저 남들이 심바 차기요 말해 심바스겠다 당고도 대중의 셰이나 모든 에듀케이션은 다 최종의 셰랍제바이나 도다 시스나 오다 심바스기와 다 남들이 봐도 심바스겠대 대담 쓰기가 심바스는 다 초삼 검숨 돈에다 검중의 셰랍 깨서는 신에 딱 문에 심바도 잡았다 심바 잡았다 왔다 그 도다 또 로가도 도다 로가도
So this also, I think, highlights the difference between what we might refer to as a Buddhist education and modern education. That we talked about gaining the wisdom arising from learning or studying, and that this is the basic certificate that we can gain, but it means that we must, on building on that, seek to win the certificate of the wisdom arising from contemplation, where we again and again and again put the information that we have learned to analysis, to checking it out, implying analytical meditation again and again and again and again, and to the point where we really gain conviction. We're really now living by the information that we have gained initially. So now we have the certificate of the wisdom arising from contemplation, but still, as far as a Buddhist education, that is not enough. You need now to gain the certificate arising from the wisdom arising from meditation, where you can now single-pointedly focus on the points of conviction that you gain, and bring them to direct realization. And that this is the only point then when you can really qualify from a kind of Buddhist school, as it were. And so this kind of contrasts quite dramatically, isn't it, really, when we look at modern education, that really modern education is gaining a certificate based on wisdom arising from learning, from the just initial certificate.
어디를 갖고 다 대도 셰인다 남도 리바도 도다니 된데도 남도 리바서 랑기로 똑바게 제대로 와.
Yes, because after all, the Buddhist education is aimed at and focused on gaining direct realizations in our own mind.
어디서 다 가제 다 되는 분도 줘서 말이 일단 주요 정도 다 이내 다 가제 다 랑기 집어라 라마 통한도 잘 진짜 다 되게 아니 장가서 다음에 매기 다 가사의 다음에도 최게 다음에 봐 얘기 또 친지 말로 맞았다 라셨습니다 탐제 줄라 아니 또나 치마로 요한도 또나 치마로 또봐 쇼제 또봐 규제 안 또봐 다기 지기 대다 제도 라말해 지글 라토스 순대 잡아라 되나 아니 집어 라마 통한도 잘 꿀래 주제 나가 외세 잡아 규마 토마면만 디바다 학도도 대대 다음에 봐 이거 또 봐라 봐도 주제게 디바다 안 되겠다 나니 되쳐서 와다 되대 또봐 켜봐자 라셨습니다 계획에 네가 켜봐자 라셨습니다 탐제기를 중소스가 어디로 고마셔.
And so now we leave it there, since time is coming to a close, and that we again focus on the figure of Guru Muninja Vajradhara on our crown, and we again think about what we have been contemplating and studying here, the lack of objective existence or selflessness of phenomena, and how wonderful it would be to be able to gain a direct realization of this. I will make it so. Please, Guru Devi, please bless me to be able to make this so. We make this kind of powerful supplications to the Guru on our crown, and from which then life rays emanate, again purifying all the negativities and obscurations that we have accumulated since beginning this time, and particularly all the obscurations and negativities and stains that are creating obstacles to our being able to gain such a realization. And furthermore, we are endowed with all of the conducive qualities and conducive facilities for being able to quickly gain such a realization.
아니 란다 디 고바시는 딱 가자 저 년중도 삼로지 고바시 아니 또 연종 삼로적 공부시에네 아니 되는 연종의 삼로당에 놓다가라 아니 자기 되게 배만 답제를 줘서 선적 공부시에.
And then at our own heart center now, we're starting to prepare the seat to welcome Guru Maninja Vajradhara by reflecting on renunciation. And from that very mind of renunciation arises the lotus mandala seat.
와다들의 심지 담쟁도 산제 고마 죽는 소소한데 아니 제바체 나디 컨디션 가와도 나디 딱까지 유대의 죽도 주모도 뭐 제바체는 다 아니 지금 장기 다 유sem니 달아 받자마치도 아니 바다다기 주만에 시다 많이 받다가라 많이 받지 와다 제바체는 다 류기도 제바체 세고도 제바체도 다 간장 가스기 있다 나오는 신 가진 단 이게 요마로 와다 많이 받대 지 삼다 한테 많이 받다가라 concepto san kacha kazam tekara concepto sa ane de no tende geloti tende ngebe kacha kazam gelot ta kacha tende ngebe lot tagara ta koso ro kacha de nime kimbachi le kyoso samsache.
And then to think of me wanting to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. What is the true nature of that me, that I, and that here we engage in reflecting on looking for such an I, or self, within the body and mind, and going through the analysis of checking for it, not finding that I in the way it appears, and merely then pausing to place one's attention on the mere lack of the mere negation of the object of negation. And then from that voidness arises the sun disk mandala seat.
Then daughter Ruata then that took under the Uten Matua Yita, the Joy, but that the day you do that, subject Tanjaka to that, Sanja Komatu and Jula Lakina, Sanja Komatu to you was the day you do that, subject the day Google, you want to Matu, the job should do. That day you must subject Tanjaka to the Sanja Kumama to not come that to what she something cheetah, and then they send Tagara and it Taviking was like you so substantial.
And then there's this reality of all phenomena lacking any objective existence and therefore arising independence, and that means that everything is possible, that really, there's the possibility of really fulfilling the purpose of all sentient beings. And I must take that opportunity. I must not lose that chance. And so I really want to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And from that very enthusiastic, inspirational mind of Bodhicitta arises the moon disk mandala.
What the day Tamani Matavi Kingo Tento, and it chanted, and the Pandita Lama Rabocha, and the Tagininga payment condition of Kuzu Mursatus, the Soda Chavalatana, Rangi, Chivo, Lamatuan to a chunk, La Soda Chavalan, Lamatuan to the Chivone, Marchen. And Rangi Ninga Katota, Pamani Matavi Tento, and Peshusu, some such, and Tama Shu. Nibashu, Sumaten, Sadia Pomata, Santa was and the Lepama come out from the meeting that and they got the logic of Zangabachi. And it took that as a stem sort of interesting get. And it did Pagoto to bet Sanga, a diet of monument master, money or so, did a for a sum judging it. And it two Coratilla and the Casota. She was with a tatilla and Arabas and Natin Quatin. Then I have not got the yet my head to Tata head of my shaman is what did it last week. But what did they feel at that? Lamatuan to Chanta, just Sadia Comato, I was so dinner. Lamatuan to some cool and research and Rangi can't think of all of your set at Tobalatana. Toma never departed to watch it. What Toma never departed to watch Kadi when they don't get chance to some such a patchat, but John Takajete. The Tagani check to Caso Takaja church to make any cage and Caso that Louis that I'm ever lost over that thought along that Tile joint of the cardio machine. And it's secular Sunday for Batubala, and Jack Carpos, Tamek Nashi, the Joint Tissue, Tamek Nashipa, 아니 맨 가나타데 다발한다 파지 차도가 양수 좀 가고
And so then we make the invitation, of course, to the Guru on our crown to come down, take this pre-prepared seat that we have at our heart. So glorious and precious root Guru, come take your lotus and moon seat placed there at my heart. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of your body, speech, and mind. This is recited thrice. With the first, the figure moves down through our central channel. With the second, at the end of the second, arrives at our heart center and seats himself there. At the end of the third recitation, we have the assurance that the Buddha will remain with us until we ourselves attain enlightenment, to really care for us until then. And this is something that brings great sense of peace of mind and joy to our hearts. This is really wonderful. And then the petals of the lotus fold over the figure who has just arrived at our heart and is sealed at the top with a white five-pronged Vajra. And then it's surrounded by the mantra of the same mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha in a clockwise direction, the mantra of Manjushri in an anti-clockwise direction, and the mantra of dependent origination in a clockwise direction again. And then again, we gain great sense of confidence about this, that it's something that's really secured as for the care of our Guru until we attain enlightenment. And then light begins to emerge from within the lotus petals and permeates through and goes through every atom of our bodies, from the tips of our heads to the soles of our feet. And again, purifying again initially all of obscurations and negativities that we have accumulated since beginning this time, and that they are all purified, and all obstacles to our being able to successfully practice and gain all these necessary realizations are kind of are given to us, bestowed upon us. This includes, the imbalancing of any imbalances in our elements and in the winds and channels and drops, and in particularly counteracting the ordinary sense of ordinary appearance we have, and really, really counteracting that to be able to see things in their enlightened state. And so, again, we rejoice at this kind of these set of whole conducive conditions.
대략 소저 시도터 로는 예랭게 아니 라마샤자스인데 꾸데 현지 지경제도 소저 류데 라마샤자스 꾸려 주소 소다 소저 시도터 셈는 예랭 라마샤자스가 투데 현지 지경제 소소게 아니 셈데 라마샤자스가 투를 주소 다 랑게 롱아 유숨다 라마샤자스 구조 동고 예매 주소 소다 아니 다간데 네디야 네게 교 탐제 젠 라마샤자스게 셰칼 주소 삼삼체 다 라마샤자스 꾸려 주 투갈레 외세트에 심제다 장다 녀베 다스 외세트발한테는 아니 저거 가서다 다 심제다 탐체 아니 라마샤자스 구소토다 뭐예매 주소서 내데다 탄자자 아니 내 교연단 라마샤자스기 가서 시작하도 주소 다 심제 탐제게도 산제 고마 주기 다 니마들이 주소서 선을 가고.
And then through the combination of my own most subtle winds acting as the substantial cause, with the body of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own body is transformed into the enlightened body of the Buddha. And then through the combination of my own most subtle mind or consciousness acting as the substantial cause, with the mind of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own mind is transformed into the enlightened mind of a Buddha. Now I have reached that point where my body, speech, and mind are indivisible from the body, speech, and mind of an enlightened being. How marvelous that is. Not only that, but the place that I am in is transformed into the enlightened palatial abode of an enlightened being. And so from this state then of having attained that state of enlightenment, I send out light rays from my heart center equal in number to all the sentient beings in all the 6 realms of existence. And upon reaching all these sentient beings and touching them, these light rays immediately cause them to become spontaneously enlightened and arrive as Buddhas. And not only that, but that their places also are transformed from what they are into again, the enlightened abodes of Buddhas. And again, I really rejoice in all of this and how wonderful this is to be able to not only have attained my own purpose, but to have attained the purpose of all sentient beings as well. This is fantastic.
아니 감도 심제 탐제 달 라마샤게 꾸르 주바 아니 데 두베치도 소지 개와 간사바 아니 두기가 소지가 유대는 맞아 동에 팔다 점제서 디 대와데 대외 동바데 대도 뉴스에 이시켜서 섬서워데 고마셔.
And these three realms of existence, the causes that lead to their enlightenment, and I as the agent of the practicing and bringing them to this state, they are all lacking any intrinsic existence and merely imputed by thought. And from that notion of emptiness arises bliss, and this bliss combines with the voidness, and we abide in the non-dual wisdom of bliss and voidness.
다다다다 삼로 삼로 문에 거라다 된데 내려오시다 가요. 이내야 이 삼로 땅와 되게 때 메시지 다 가자 저기 가서도 다 저기 가서도 다 가자 된데 용에게 아니 된데 툭툭에게 아니 용화 쇼스네 줄을 모아지다. 누구도 툭툭하지다. 심지어 탐제 산제 고마 툭툭이 왔다가 산제 대체도 아니 가자다. 가서도 다 가자 저기 대체도 아니 가서도 다 자주 섬다 돈이 또 메시라다. La gamle chetumasho. Anda di chetu ta kaja soso ga ta kibu chunne ta tupu chunne ta kange kade chebane tiki kande chuma ina ane sange kande chuma ina ya dede sange ju ane jamji jandu ga sida toni to me shera kebe ge ane juge le juasho juchi sumo ache.
And so, of course, we know we're operating at the level of imagination here. This is just a thought in our mind, but we know that this is a very auspicious thought in our mind, and so we make a very sincere dedication that that this may become truly manifest as quickly as possible, and that I may be able to generate these twin minds of the mind of enlightenment and a true realization of emptiness as quickly as possible, so as to complete the collections of method and merit and wisdom in order to attain enlightenment. And for that, in understanding that, I will integrate all of what happens to me in life, whatever experiences of happiness, joy, suffering, problems that I encounter, I will become incredibly skillful at transforming them all into conducive conditions for practice, into causes to attain the state of enlightenment.
Short life generator, long life generator, happy life generator, unhappy. Kai kebamdo. Di kanga jandu samda toni to be shera kewege ane juta kela juta tigidu samsachi what it.
So yeah, absolute determination that whether I have a long life, a short life, a happy life, a miserable life, no difference whatsoever, that every experience that I have, I will see to it that it becomes a cause to further the realization of the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness. If I can do that, no problems, absolutely fine.
What did the compassion? What did the compassion? Nimari the compassion, ani tos because of the kujo tos take it.
So like every single day, if we try to set a determined, enthusiastic motivation like that, we will start to see some transformation for sure.
Today, Chua Yemba ina, and it was a Ilam Chujela, some of the Koture. Today, Chua ina was a shit of the some of the Koture. Shit of the some of the Kotona. Kewa Jamati, Milu Logita, Sanjay Temachi, touch of it.
And so that, if we can familiarize our mind to such an extent in our waking hours that then even in our dreams, we will be dreaming of developing the mind of enlightenment and realizing emptiness. And if that's the case, if we get to that point, that's wonderful. Then we'll have absolutely guarantee that we will have a precious human rebirth and meet with the Dharma's teachings in the future and be able to further cultivate these qualities.
Kenyan country choina, Chandu Sana, only to be share some clan Cortobaina, and there is Cortobaina, and she to the Kanga de Chandu Sana, only to be share some Cortoba.
Because yes, it's just by the sheer familiarity if our practice is to transform or to take every negative or positive condition in our lives and to immediately refer it to our development of the mind of enlightenment and the realization of emptiness, and then at our point of death, those are the thoughts that will surely arise in our minds, the mind of enlightenment and emptiness, and that would be most auspicious.
그래, 다른 가슴에 먼저 책을 넘쳐 제다 preparation 봐, preparation.
Yeah, so again, I'm saying all our training and studying in Buddhism is like preparation for that. So we do our Lam Rim prayer. From my two collections, vast space that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds' wisdom eye is blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all lives from Geshe. May I find the best of complete graded paths of teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by my practice. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the paths I have discerned in. May I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by even this great path to enlightenment completed, due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their children. May all human and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may they always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. Gong Chen
Pe
Su
Su
Chen
Song
Song
Kapa
Lo
Lo
Sang
Sang
Drag
Drag
Pe
Pe
Cha Blo
Chablo
So
So
Ding
Ne
Men
Re
Se
Pe
Hui Su Chen Chen Re
Cherezi
Si Dring
Dreamer
Men
Kyan
Re
Pe
Wang
Wang Po
Po
Jan
Jan
Pe
Gong
Gong
Chen
Chen
Pei
Pe
Su
Su
Chen
Chen
Song
Song
Ka
Kapa
Lo
Lo Sang
Sang Drag
Drag Pe
Pei Sha
Chabla
Lo So
So
You
I,
are
Brother
Avalokiteshvara, a
Kiteshvara,
great
great
treasure
treasure
of
of
compassion,
compassion,
not
not
aiming
aimed
at
at
true
true
existence,
existence,
and Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Rajapani, destroyer
destroyer
of
of hordes
hordes of
of
demons,
demons
that
without exception,
Tsongkhapa,
crown
crown
jewel of
jewel
the
of the
sage of the
sages
land
of
of
lavish
snows,
snows,
slice and
dwells
drop
in
at your
background,
feet,
at your
I
feet,
make
I make
requests.
requests.
Also, and Tojiche. Thank you very much,
Thank
you,
everyone.
Caroline. Thank you,
So,
Noel.
Thank
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 you.
you, Hannah. Look
Thank
after your
you.
health,
Yeah,
everybody. Take
everyone,
care.
take care.
Thank you, no. Thank you, Master.
Thank you, Noel. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Genla.
Thank you, Master.
Thank you, thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you, no.
Bye,
Take
guys.
care, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Bye.
Thank you, Genla. Thank you, Noel.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Okay, bye. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll turn on my. Again, last week you gave an example of using a cup of coffee. And I was just wondering if you could go over that example again quickly. It was to do with like the, now I can't think of the right word. Do you know the example that I mean? Analyzing a cup of coffee to kind of show the different parts of it, to like break it down, to show I've completely lost. To show the lack of dependence between the different parts.
Yeah.
Or to show the interdependence, yeah.
Listen. Niemi don't try to so the basic gonna paper right. Yeah, so the coffee the and the ranking maybe the some the canvas.
Coffee.
Coffee.
Coffee. No, that coffee the 망고지는 손을 연구도 뭐도 cup of coffee 와. cup of coffee 때 아니 그 저기 망고지를 때는 coffee 속에 coffee machine 아니 다가는 coffee 그 제래 아니 오마래 아니 sugar 아니 다 망고지를 때는 cup of coffee 연구도 그 로아 망고지 손을 연구도 와. 로아 아니 로아 다 망고지 그 손을 연구도 와. 그 라와의 조가 이바이나 되게 그걸 떼고 그 말과 되게 그걸 떼네 아니 용거도 그 라와의 조배가 다 된게 와.
So the coffee example, was there to demonstrate the lack of objective existence of the cup of coffee, because even cursory analysis of the cup of coffee will show that it's made up of many different parts and many different attributes really. So you have the coffee grounds, you have the milk. If you're a sugar taker, you have the sugar in there. You also have the machine that it's made in, the barista involved in the making of it, the place that is having it in. And there's so many kind of causes and conditions that must give rise to the coffee, that the coffee rises in dependence upon all of these different things. And therefore, it can't have an objective or independent existence. And so it must have an existence that is a dependent arising. That's the example.
다 되게 그 그런 파트가 그 파트만 coffee 좀 둬.
So again, using the analysis that we have been using of the 4 key points, that if you say that the coffee somehow is exists independently apart from its parts, then you take away all the different, take away the milk, take away the sugar, take away the coffee, take away the barista, and what have you? You don't see a coffee that's left there. There's no coffee. So you say that it cannot exist, apart from its parts.
Okay.
Time for a coffee, maybe.
Yeah.
May I just add that all the teachings are on YouTube. So if you go to our website, you can get a link. So if you have forgotten something, you will be able to replay it back if you go back to YouTube, including today's teaching and this question as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Including all my mistakes, no, probably. Yeah.
Well, we've got a disclosure on there anyway. So.
Oh, good. Thank you, John.
Oh, thank you very much. No, thank you.
Okay. Everyone, take care.
Yeah.
Also again.
Okay.
Can I get thrown in yak one yarrow again?
Okay.
That's all, please.
Okay.
Thank